रियल टीवी के साथ प्रोग्राम रियलिटी चेक with Mustafa Ehsan. Today's host Mustafa Ehsan here with you. Ever since Hazrat Adam, humans have been in search for two things: the power that created humans, the power that created us, and how to run the world and its economy. The second thing has been to create some form of entertainment, sports for our own mental and physical relaxation. Today, we are going to be talking about the latter one, which is our entertainment, and specifically about sports and where it came about. On the call today with us is Miss Saima Dastagir from Islamabad. She's an educationist and works with children all the time and in the avenue of sports as well. So welcome, Miss Saima.
Thanks for inviting me. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Mustafa Sahab, thank you so much for inviting me on your show. This sounds like a very interesting idea. Can you please tell us, what do you know, as I am the teacher and I go through with the students throughout, and we organize sports events and so and so. So what do you think? What do you know about the origin and the earliest sport discovered?
Thanks, Ms. Saima. The first or the oldest painting of a Neanderthal, which was our early ancestors, was discovered in 70,000 BC with a cave painting of a guy throwing a spear. So that is known to be an early weapon used not just as a warfare but as sports as well. However, the first actual painting that most historians agree on were found at the caves in Lecaux, France, in the south of France, where they discovered sprinting and wrestling in 15,300 BC pictures as a sport, that entertainment for the whole community. These were discovered in the south of France in a cave.
Okay.
After that, you come to 7,000 BC. There are paintings in caves in Mongolia where they're fighting wrestling around a crowd. So it's not just a war, it's basically a form of entertainment that they gather crowds and they will fight. They have two men fight in front of them. So that's around 7,000 BC time frame. Now let's go to 3,000 BC time frame. A European archaeologist in 1993 discovered a cave of swimmers, is what the name is called. It's on the southwest border of Egypt and Lebanon, and there are paintings of, it's called Wadi Sura, and there are paintings of people doing swimming and archery as sports. So that is the oldest sports cave paintings and in the cave of swimmers that we have been able to find so far as the history of sports go.
Okay, very good. This is very good information that you have shared with us. But I have two questions. May I?
Sure, absolutely. Please go ahead.
Okay. How did sport come into being? And secondly, when did it turn into organized events?
So sports really came into being as a military weapon. If you look at the earliest times of sports, there were three things that sports came out of: as a ritual, as a warfare, like going into a war with an army, or as a form of entertainment. Now, the earliest form of sports came out of warfare, going into war. So all the individual competitions that they had between two individuals, like let's say archery, let's say throwing a spear, let's say wrestling, boxing, that have been paintings of wrestlers boxing in some tombs in Egypt found in the 1500 BCs. So there's a boxing existed till then as well. So those were competitions that were held to be for the stronger men who would lead their military to war. Then there were team events that came into sports, and those were more to learn about which people could work in teams better and were better as soldiers, not as leaders. So that's how sports came into being, as first from the military side of things.
Okay. Mustafa sir, don't you think that we have also a history in Islamic, in Islamic history, the sports history? Do you have knowledge about this, and would you like to share with us?
Oh, absolutely. There is a lot of great knowledge about, especially in Egypt. After Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, there was a lot of sports that were happening in Egypt at the time as well. So that was going to be the focus on my next topic, or my next show that I do online with you, that we talk about.
Okay.
My primary focus was to go through
Yes,
the prehistoric
sorry
period.
for interruption.
Oh no,
I would
please.
like to introduce the sports era in Islamic history.
Sure.
Excuse me. In Islamic history, so people come to know, actually we are the founders. We Muslims are the founders of everything. Don't you think this? Do you agree with me?
No, I personally do not actually agree with you on that one. And I have to go with the scientific and historic figures for that. Because if you look at the times, there are clear paintings by the historians have validated that existed in tombs in Egypt with the pharaohs from dating back to 1500 BC, and that was before the time of Islam. Islam, I agree with you, took it a lot further, but I would disagree with you, Ms. Saima, that Islam invented that competition of sports as well.
That's very great, and you have really shared with us a very great knowledge, and for especially my students as well. I have one more question
Please.
for you. I have a lot of people see Roman gladiators
Sure.
as the first organized brutal sport.
Right.
Can you tell us about the gladiators? So I'll be more comfortable to elaborate my students about if someone asks me, then what is gladiator?
Sure. This topic I can talk about a lot. Actually, I have quite a bit of history. It has been a passion of mine as well to study them. The first gladiator, it's according to historians, was actually done at a funeral for the army general Brutus. So, and they used to do it to celebrate the life of those noble men, and two of the more brave men would fight it out at that funeral to give that noble man a proper burial. That's where the gladiators came out. And this is 1500 BC, Miss Saiba. So then gladiator became an actual sport around 776 BC. 776 BC. Now there is a very historical figure or historical event associated with that date.
Right.
Those were the first Olympics ever held. That was not just Greek or Roman, and there was truce between different countries where they would send their strongest men, their strongest athletes to compete at the Olympics. And that went on for a long time, every 4 years, which has still been going on, as you know. So as far as the gladiator goes, they were mostly in the beginning of it, other than the funerals, they were mostly slaves that had special schools for spare sword fighting, different fighting animals and all that. And they would fight the criminals to death in front of people as a form of entertainment. And if the criminal or even the slave and there are some myths that I would like to clear about gladiators. First of all, not every fight would end in death. They would raise their hand, and then they would let the people decide who were attending those fights whether they would want that person to be killed or that person to live. So that's one myth. The other myth is that it not always involved fighting with lions as is shown in Hollywood movies, Miss Saiba. So no, seriously. So they normally, most of these games would start off with one animal fight or animal fighting another animal, and then they would go into men fighting men. They would give the criminals lesser weapons, sometimes just a net and a slave or a nobleman, like all the other weapons they had to fight them to death. So that's another myth that people did not know. In 80 AD, they opened the Colosseum in, in the Roman culture in Rome, and to this day, the Colosseum still stands, even though there is no gladiator fighting over there. There were 80 entrances, and people will get tickets to go see them and have their seats associated like they do in the modern culture these days. So they started that culture of having tickets to go to sports events and actually watch them from assigned seats.
Okay. Thank you so much, Mustafa Sahab. As we have too many questions in our mind, but as you know, we have very less time for our program. Inshallah, in the next program, I'll be with you and we'll ask you more about sports.
Thank you so much, Ms. Saima. I
You
appreciate.
have shared. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Allah Hafiz.